Welcome, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Mary Ann Hensley, and I'm the Vice President of Sponsor Content Operations for FreightWaves, and we're happy to present today's webinar in partnership with Trucker Tools. Today, we'll be exploring how real-time data can be used to improve load visibility and tracking for 3PLs and their clients. We'll be hearing insights from Prasad Galapalli, founder and CEO of Trucker Tools, as well as Jeff Turner, who is the President and CEO of Choptank Transport. We'll also have a live Q&A with both speakers following the presentation. Before we get started, just a couple of quick housekeeping items. First, if you have any issues at all during the webinar, please feel free to reach out to our team via the chat function in your Zoom control panel. Also, if you have questions that you would like to ask our presenters, please enter those through the Q&A box in your control panel, and we'll answer as many of those as we have time for during the audience Q&A following the speaker presentation. At this point, without further ado, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Prasad.
Thank you, Marianne. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar this afternoon. Today we have amazing guest speaker, Jeff Turner. Okay. That's good. So at this point, I'd like to take a minute and have Jeff introduce himself and his company, Choptank. Jeff?
Hey, Prasad. Thank you for having me, and thanks to the FreightWaves team for hosting this webinar. A little bit about Choptank. We're a 3PL based in Maryland. We move about 150,000 loads a year with a little over 400 employees. We sort of cut our teeth in the industry years ago with a lot of food products and perishable products, and that's sort of been our story from a growth perspective. We still do a lot of those type of loads through a lot of different types. We have a truckload operation and a reefer consolidation business and dry LTL, and so we've got a nice mix of business. But I appreciate Prasad having me on today because this issue is a growing concern for everybody as we navigate through what our customers are expecting and the new reality of the service issues that customers are expecting us to solve for them, and also with the keen understanding of how we are fair and reasonable to the carriers that are helping us accomplish this. So, Prasad, thanks for having me, and I look forward to participating in the discussion.
Thank you, Jeff. So for everyone, before I go into explaining what Trucker Tools does, Choptank is one of our most valuable customers. So a little bit about Trucker Tools. Trucker Tools is a software platform that helps brokers and carriers connect with each other. We look at it as a relationship platform with the purpose of providing you real-time visibility on where the load is from pickup to delivery with the pickup and delivery confirmations. Once the load's been picked up and delivered, the driver can scan the documents such as proof of delivery documents or bill of lading, and send them back to you. So that tracking part is one part of the platform. The other part is helping brokers and carriers match available loads with available trucks, or you call it digital freight matching. So that's the scope of our platform. Today we are focusing on the tracking side, especially given the fact that there is a increased focus on visibility for most of you if you're a broker or a 3PL, primarily coming from the shipper. Our platform is built around our mobile app, Trucker Tools app. We have about 700,000 truckers who use our app. That translates to 130,000 plus small carriers and owner-operators. So our sweet spot is about 10 trucks or less. So when if you're a broker, you're working with small carriers, So we already have the majority of these small carriers on our platform. The app acts as the sticky or the interface with the driver by providing everything the driver needs on the road. Whether it's cheapest fuel, service centers, weigh scales, rest areas. So we help these drivers with everything that they need even before they pick up your load. And when they pick up your load, we help them with going to the destination. With things like parking is another major thing that we help the driver with. These features that we have with the theme of simplifying the driver's life on the road helps us build that trust with the driver, and in return we are able to provide the tracking services or the matching services to the broker. So as a quick backdrop of our conversation today, some of the latest trends that we are seeing today are focused on visibility. Visibility is the most important thing, and that's the core part of our conversation today. But there are also two or three other things that we are touching. One is we're seeing a very good adoption from small carriers and drivers to technology, especially mobile technology. And in today's world, if you're a broker or a 3PL, your primary business is done through a bunch of these small carriers and owner-operators. So we'll keep our focus on these elements. As part of our webinar, the very first thing that we would like to bring your attention to is some of the challenges that a typical broker faces today. And on the same slide, we're also looking at what were the problems that Choptank has faced before coming to Trucker Tools. So the top three things that are consistent across the market and with Choptank was back before they joined our platform was the visibility was one of the biggest issues. Today's market, we are seeing about 30% on average compliance. In most cases, that's even less than 30%. So when we say compliance, having full visibility from pickup to delivery of the load, not just 1 or 2 points here and there, which is really translating into extra expense for brokers, but more importantly, frustration with the shippers. The second major issue that we have seen is the carrier adoption. About 80 to 90% of the carriers are forming as one load wonder. So they are leaving the broker system after moving a load. So this round robin fashion of carriers going from broker to broker are causing a lot of extra expense for brokers, because every time you have a new load, you're qualifying the carrier, you're re-establishing that relationship. And quite frankly, this is all summarized in operational inefficiency that's causing the cost of covering a load high. So at this point, I want to bring our guest into the conversation here. Jeff, these are some of the things that your organization has seen in the past, and you have looked at these things. Are there any other issues, or would you like to go a little deep in this, some of the challenges that your team has faced before coming to Trucker Tools?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the birth of our relationship with Trucker Tools was related around we over time got incredibly frustrated with some of our shipper clients who would have a relationship with another vendor, and then we'd go through some sort of integration process with another visibility vendor, and then 6 months later they decide to switch to another vendor, and that cycle continues, and we switch to another vendor, and and we felt like there had to be a better way, and especially from the carrier perspective, because we found it incredibly difficult for the carriers to do a load for us, and then we say, hey, you need to track on trucker tools, and then, you know, the very next load we do for them, because of some sort of particular customer requirement, we had to use a different vendor, and that became a challenge for us, because, you know, it's important for us about the carrier experience, and we wanted more of a seamless experience for our carriers, that if they were going to do a load for us, that they knew that the one application that they would use would be trucker tools. So the one thing that we decided is that we would take a approach that we would just feed the data to whoever needs it, because at the end of the day, latitude and longitude is not rocket science, right? So it really doesn't matter where it's coming from. It's just data. So and we really wanted to just focus on that carrier side and make sure that it was seamless for them. So that was sort of the birth of why we wanted to pick one vendor. So we had a seamless product and a seamless situation for our carriers. And I think that has helped drive adaptation from our carriers, because we're not really being wishy-washy on that with them. They understand the expectation, and we're not going to give them a different load that requires a different application. So that became important. And then, you know, as we drilled in farther, we at Choptank, we have a carrier committee of some of our better small carriers that we get together. And one of the common themes that we heard from them is that they really didn't like having an app for individual brokers, or a app that really was single function. They didn't like that. And this is just our experience. Others may have a different view on this, but we found that they were more apt to use a service like Trucker Tools that was a little more centric to the carrier lifestyle, not so much just captive to a particular broker or whatever. So we found that if we could, you know, have the carrier experience revolve around how the carrier lives on the road, that they'd be more likely to use the app. Meaning, to get to the point where the tracking through the app is really a secondary item, right? The primary item of the app would be, hey, I need to know where a weigh station is, or I need to know where the cheapest fuel is, or I need to know where to park, and to drive utilization through that. So it's much more of a community type app, instead of just, hey, this is, you know, an app that's going to follow me around, you know. So to get to the point with the carrier community, that the app is a true community that they can, you know, find what they need on the road. And then, by the way, if you do a load through Choptank, we'll be able to track the load through it. So that's what we found from talking to carriers, and we've had really good luck with telling our story to carriers on that, and we have done really good. And I mean, we've been pushing above 90% adoption with the product, and just really good results. And we've sort of been, and I've had a lot of conversation with folks about that. And I mean, our story to them is that our customers are starting to push this. I mean, we've signed contracts that say that, you know, we've got to have 100% visibility. So from the carrier perspective, if they want access to some of this freight, they're going to have to do this. So that's sort of been our story. And I think, you know, anybody that's struggling with adoption just has to really get their story together on how they want to explain to carriers, and not say, oh, by the way, will you agree to be tracked? That's probably not the best message to them. You've got to sort of tell the story on that. So, you know, we've had good luck on that. And then from the efficiency standpoint, I mean, I think we could all be in the same category of saying that, you know, efficiency is super important. And, you know, as our organization has grown and we've have 24-hour coverage, and the opportunities exist to sort of drive out some costs because we know where these guys are, and we can eliminate a lot of these manual check calls. And so that's sort of been our win on the efficiency side. And not to mention as we continue to bolt on the smart capacity product, but again, elimination of a good chunk of those check calls because we're getting that feed has been very critical to driving efficiencies within our organization. So Prasad, that's about what I can add from the challenges that we faced and how we sort of were able to at least start to mitigate some of them through the use of the Trucker Tools application.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for sharing those comments, and especially one thing that you said. When we talk to carriers, one thing that comes very prominent is they don't like to use multiple apps. They keep saying that we don't want to get have to download 20 different apps for 20 different things. So we, as you know, we made the carrier group as part of our customer advisory board so they could influence our product roadmap and tell us what they would like to see in the app. The second point, Jeff, that you mentioned is again very much resonant with anytime we put a technology solution that people have to go through a bunch of hoops to use it. The adaptability is absolutely bad with those. So we try to minimize the onboarding process. So today when somebody comes to Trucker Tools, or when you have a carrier that you want to track, the time it takes to actually set up a carrier is just minuscule, almost like in a few seconds, you can start setting up a carrier and start tracking that carrier. And that kind of a wide reach gives the platform to quickly build on itself rather than have a lead time. So some of the things that we looked at here, Jeff, is there anything else that caught your attention when you were looking at us, Trucker Tools platform, that that anything that you and I have not discussed today?
I think the last piece of it is that as a growing organization, our thirst for this type of data has just grown exponentially, and we've been really excited with the ability of Trucker Tools to be adaptive to the way that we need to use that data. We currently use McLeod as our TMS, and we've actually built a proprietary customer application that Trucker Tools has been more than happy to help us work on data flows and things for that application. So I guess the point that I'd also like to share is that the organization has been very good about seeing and helping us grow and add products and services to our platform that help assist our customers in gaining that visibility that they desperately want.
Thank you, Jeff, for nice feedback. So we recently did a case study with Choptank, and the results are they have improved their operational efficiency by 20%. The tracking compliance went from 40% to 97%. So for those who are out there, one thing I want to be very specific is when we talk about tracking compliance, what we mean by that is if you are planning to track 100 loads with Trucker Tools, how many of those 100 loads you're able to successfully track from pickup to delivery and get all the points, get all the alerts such as pickup and delivery alerts. So today we're consistently getting over 90 out of 100 loads for Choptank successfully tracked through us. And that number has increased over a period of time. Jeff, when your company came on board, I believe we were about 60% or so. And what are some of the measures that you have taken to get that number high? Because it's a teamwork. It's not just our platform, doing all the things. It's your team working with our platform together doing that.
No, that's a great question, and that's honestly one I get asked the most. And I think there's a couple things there, and I think I briefly mentioned this. It's been sort of a top-down approach from our organization that we really have just went to our carrier sales folks and said that this really isn't an option. And it has led us to, number one, we have to make some decisions some days on who we're using on loads, which can be a challenge. We've also had to have some critical conversations with some of our other carriers that sort of were not in agreement with it, but we've been really successful in taking the time to tell the story to them, and that's worked really well. The other thing that I can add is that we really tried to be proactive with not, it's just sort of our process now. It's not a sidebar. It's not all, you cover the load and then call back and, oh, by the way, we need to track you. It's sort of in the process of how we move our freight, and that's been really helpful. So I think it's got to be pushed down from the top, and it just has to be sort of ingrained in your culture that this is the way it's going to be done. And again, I could be wrong on this topic, but I got to believe that in 2 to 3, 4 years that the customers are just going to demand this, and I don't know that it's going to be much of an option. So I think the more we can get on board with this is good. I also think that we've certainly been aided by Trucker Tools having other brokers on the platform, and when I say that it should be really like a community, the more brokers we have on the platform, I'm not naive enough to think that the carriers I'm using are loading for a lot of other people that are probably on this phone. So the more they keep hearing about Trucker Tools and the ability to do what it does, I think it's just going to make all of our jobs easier, that if it's more of a community approach on the tracking is a norm, and let's rally around this product. So I think the more we can talk about it, it should get easier for everybody, because it's going to be sort of barked at them from all of the high quality brokers out there.
Thank you, Jeff. And for the audience, I just want to clarify one thing. So Jeff, when you said, when we have brokers on our platform, it helps each other. One point that kind of comes up is, are we sharing carriers with each other? Are we sharing their information? And we want to be very careful and be very clear on this point is, as Jeff said, if a carrier is being used by Choptank and let's say another broker, ABC, so the information doesn't go across the brokers here. It stays with whoever the broker is. But the advantage that Jeff's referring to here is, let's say that carrier is already on our platform, then when this ABC broker starts using or adapts to Trucker Tools and uses that carrier, they don't have to talk to that carrier and have that carrier download the app. So this is where the advantage comes in. And since the app is very sticky with the drivers, they're not deleting the app after they're done with moving a load for Choptank, and when they go on to this new ABC broker, they don't have to re-download. They already have Trucker Tools app. That's an advantage. And over a period of time, today we have over 130,000 carriers. So at some point, the rate at which we adapt to these carriers would probably slow down a little bit, but we don't have to add any more carriers to this platform.
Yeah, and Prasad, thanks for that clarification, and you're spot on. The meaning more so was from our end, we're starting to see more and more carriers that are, when we say, hey, we need to, use Trucker Tools to track you on this order, they're like, yeah, okay, we know what that is. So I think that's sort of the more that know it, it just makes it easier and easier to do this. So I think the familiarity with the product is growing, and that at the end makes everybody's job a little easier.
Thank you, Jeff. And I also want to, clarify. These are usually the questions that we get asked in our product demos or conversations with potential customers. So when we say the broker community, by no means we are a co-op where we're trying to share everybody's carriers with everyone all the time. We don't do that. So meaning when Choptank has a load with a carrier, that information is only for Choptank and it's not going across our. So the community part comes in only in having the carriers adapt to the platform, especially in downloading the app. That is where the help comes for having different brokers on the platform. So with that, I'm going to go to the next slide on the results of our case study that we did with Choptank, or on the screen. I know, Jeff, you probably get asked this question all the time, and the increase of compliance from 40 to 97%. I know you touched on this a little bit on how it was a top-down approach. What are some of the points or some of the milestones you have to go through, or targets you have to go internally to get there?
Number one, everybody on the team needed to know and understand the product, and that was important to us. That again, that we had a good story to tell the carriers on why we need to do this. So we didn't want a wishy-washy, well, we just need to track you, because that's not really the truth of the matter. I mean, there's a lot more value for both parties than just saying you got to track. So I think it's that training perspective on understanding how the product works, what other tools are available in the product for the carriers to use and want them to retain using the app. So that to me was probably the important thing about just making sure that we were an absolute training machine on understanding how the app worked, and that sort of helped because our folks came off as very knowledgeable of the product, and I think that gave a certain reassurance to the carriers to do that. And it wasn't just well, we got to track you, because that to me is not a good message to send to the carrier. So I think just working with your team, pushing it down, and setting the tone that this is not an option, because again, as I mentioned earlier, we're seeing customers that are demanding 100% visibility, and that's and we all know how that goes. As soon as one or two start doing things, it usually trickles down that everybody does it and doesn't understand the challenges, and we sort of got to live up to those challenges and make it happen. So that would be, to me, some of the challenges that we faced.
Thank you, Jeff. And some of the other numbers that are on the screen here, today's Choptank has over 85% of their carriers adopted to our platform. They're continuing to grow that number. We already touched on the operational efficiency. And, when we talk about tracking compliance being high is an important thing, the part that typically comes to my mind is, most of the customers or shippers don't want to know every 5 minutes where the load is. That's not what we're looking at providing. But, when you as a broker or a 3PL, when you talk to shippers, when one of your team members is calling the shipper on a particular load and say this load is being picked up, this load has arrived, or arrived at this destination, having the confidence in that information, that load has been indeed picked up and the guy is in transit. Or when you look at the ETA, knowing that this truck is going to arrive at that location in another 2 hours with confidence, not with gray area, puts the broker and the 3PL in the driving seat. So it's while the frequency of tracking is important and the accuracy of the tracking is important, we're not looking at having to bombard the shipper every 5 minutes and tell them where the load is, but almost give them the real-time information of where the truck is. More importantly, equip you with the pickup and delivery confirmations. Jeff, in your conversations with shippers, you probably have gone through this a lot, but having this a better tracking solution, how do you see that helping your team when you work with shippers?
Yeah, I mean, the problem that the opportunity we've had with shippers is that, you know, they claim that they want all this data, right? They want it 5 minutes or whatever, and you know, so we've tried to explain to them that that's really not where we want to get with this product. I mean, we can do that, but I think it's more about the exception management side of it. And you know, if a truck is en route and a truck is where he should be, you know, do you really want to know every 5 minutes? The more optimal solution there is so that they know where the exceptions are, and that to me is the important thing. That, you know, when a truck is going to be late, or when a truck is going to be is out of route or whatever, that's sort of when this kicks in. So I think it's an education thing to the customers as well. I mean, we still have ones that want it all the time, every 5 minutes or every 6, 12, whatever it is. And that is a challenge, because that's a lot of data flowing, and most of them don't even know what to do with all that data. So again, we've tried to educate them on, let's talk about how we can get you the data that really helps you to run a more efficient dock. You know, how can we tell you at 8 in the morning that a truck's going to be late at 2 in the afternoon just because of where he is now? So helping them build those exceptions into their supply chain to make them more efficient is sort of where we've been coming from the shipper perspective, and not just sending over a ton of data that they really can't use.
Thank you, Jeff. And so to bring our conversation to a conclusion here, so for the listeners today, Jeff, if I'm a broker today or a 3PL, I'm looking at technology partners, what are certain things you would suggest that I should look at in that technology partner?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important from our perspective that technology partners understand that the movement of freight is and the process thereof is sort of different with each organization. Yeah, getting the load from A to B is the same, but you know, how we handle exceptions and the exception management from each freight mode, meaning a reefer load has different requirements than a flatbed load and things like that. So the bigger picture is there, does your partner, or are they willing to work with you on the issues that are inherent in your organization, not necessarily the way that they think the brokerage industry is, more so cater to the needs of each individual participant. So I think their ability to listen and adapt to what they see the needs of the individual brokers are is really important for us. And I think the other piece is especially when we're talking about having a product that we're relying on our carriers to use, that they're looking out for the needs of the carriers. And I think the important thing is that we're never going to get adaptation from the carriers if it's just a one-off app or something. It's got to be a lifestyle app. It's got to be something that they're going to find value in after they haul my load or after they haul anybody else's load, and sort of keep them wanting to use it. So I think the ability to update the app and keep it on a carrier-centric, carrier-friendly model is important, because that's where the win is we can talk all this, but if we can't get the carriers to want to use it, that's a problem. And Prasad and their team at Trucker Tools has been very upfront that, you know, they wanted to build this mechanism around making it a carrier-friendly app, and they've done a great job with that and continue to do so. And continue to add features that are looking out for the needs of the carriers that are on the road.
Thank you, Jeff, for the kind words on that. I definitely agree with you on the pace at which the technology is moving. As a vendor, from our viewpoint, we should never ever look at the product as a standstill. And one way to constantly keep changing is having the people who use the software be part of the roadmap, whether it's carrier or a broker. We have implemented that at Trucker Tools. We have our customer advisory board with both carriers and brokers as part of that, so that they can help us shape the future of the product. If we make the responsibility or the responsibility of the roadmap, or put that responsibility on both brokers, carriers, and us, two sides of it, we could definitely build this product for the group that actually uses it. With that, I'll send it back to Marianne and see if we have any questions from the audience.
Absolutely. Thank you both so much for sharing your perspectives. And at this point, as Prasad said, we'd like to take some time for questions from the audience. So if you have not already submitted those, please go ahead and type them into the Q&A section of your control panel. We do have a few so far, so I will start with you, Jeff. With respect to your 97% compliance, how is that impacting your relationship or standing with your customers? Are you able to gain more business from your customers because of this, or are you able to leverage it as a tool to get more customers?
It's a combination of both. I would say, one, we've had to do it to keep some customers, meaning that have sort of demanded that we do it. And then two, it's been leverage for us that especially as we build out our customer portal, that they're able to leverage this data themselves and go in and see where the orders are. So it's helped us leverage gaining additional business as well. So it's really been a combination of both. It's been the need to accommodate some customers that have demanded it, and using it as leverage to say, hey, are your other providers able to provide you with this type of service? And so it's been a win-win from both sides in accomplishing that.
Okay, great. And then for Prasad, what is it about your offering that puts you at 97%? And what do you think is the most important factor that's helping you get there?
So the most important thing that's really helping the app to get there is, first of all, it's an app which is on driver's smartphone. So as we mentioned during the webinar, with an app-based solution, it's easier to get the carrier set up to it. If you build an all-in-one app, that provides a better experience for carriers beyond a particular load, tracking a particular load. And as Jeff mentioned during our webinar, tracking becomes almost a secondary offering rather than the primary one. The primary one for us is an all-in-one app that simplifies life on the road for the drivers. That has been the key aspect for us to get that 97% or over 90% for most of the customers. And for the customers, if you are looking at Trucker Tools today, what I would like to just say up front is, when you come to us, don't just think that when you come here on the first day you'll see 97%. What you might see is a very decent success rate from where you are, but over a period of time it should go up with us. So we consistently, let's say you start off at 60 or 70% compliance with us. Over a period of time, month over month, that number will continue to grow for you, and our team will also step in and share with you what are the best practices, how could we help you get a higher compliance. So it's a teamwork from our side and your side that Trucker Tools is committed to. So you'll have our support throughout the life of the product.
Great. And then for you, Jeff, what are you doing with your additional 20% efficiency? Are you using that 20% to get more loads from your customers? And how did that help to increase your business?
Yeah, I mean, the main goal is there to take away, what I would call non-revenue generating functions, meaning, the check calls and things like that, that the constant follow-up that we were having to do. We sort of remove that from the process so that our carrier salespeople can be more on top of working those relationships with carriers and that type, and essentially move more freight. And the second piece is as we bolted on, different night operations and after hours operations, we haven't had to add as much staff because primarily the functions on those part of the operation is really driven around efficiency and, because it's more so of track and trace and things like that. So we've had to expand staff less on those shifts as our load count has grown, just because it's just that much more efficient with, if we know where our guy is and we know he's moving, we don't make a call to him. So we've gained a lot of efficiencies, both from the carrier sales perspective and just from those more administrative tasks that really affect your bottom line.
Great. And Prasad, have you seen any issues with people maybe not wanting to download an app? And what do you say to those who claim that carriers don't want to download a mobile app for tracking?
So I know most of the people today think drivers hate downloading an app. And the other thing that most of the people think out there is with an app-based tracking, at best maybe 20 to 30% is the compliance that we're going to get. For those people, my 2 cents that we have been learning is, first of all, drivers are not opposed to technology at all. They really use smartphones for everything that they need to do on the road. So they have adapted to smartphone technology far more than we all assume they do. In today's market, there are almost 99.some% of drivers have smartphones. The second part is, but drivers are very selective. They don't want to just download any app out there. That is where the resistance comes in. So if I'll give you an example. If we ask the driver to download 20 different apps for 20 different things, the driver is definitely going to say no to that. He's going to push back. And this is another point that Jeff has shared here. Like Choptank, we also went to the drivers, owner-operators and small carriers, and asked them what kind of apps you like to download, what kind of apps you don't like to download. The apps that they want to download are third-party, all-in-one app that helps them on the road. What they don't want to download is a single utility app or an app that doesn't do much for them. Or they also said, hey, we don't want to be downloading an app for each broker because we end up working with 10, 15 brokers. We don't want to be having to jump back and forth between these apps. So they want an all-in-one. And just to simplify everything, it's the driver experience on the road or with the app is what makes the driver adoption go high or low. For us, we have seen very good adoption without drivers. That's primarily because we made them part of the product roadmap. We put things that they need. We provide everything that they want in one app. And we are very transparent with the driver. That transparency is what that builds the trust. So I'll take this conversation one step forward and say this. For the audience who attended this webinar, our marketing team has a promotion where if you are getting a very low compliance, let's say up to 30%, come to us. If you adopt to Trucker Tools platform, we guarantee that you could double your compliance up to 60%. So that's how confident we are with our tracking or the driver adaptability.
Awesome. Thank you Prasad. And Jeff, back to you. What is your long-term vision with your partnership with Trucker Tools? What's next for you, and what are you trying to achieve with the platform?
I'm sorry, I missed the last comment you broke. Was it platform you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think, as we build it out, the visibility is the first phase in this, and then how do we take the visibility piece and use that to really help our folks be more efficient from sort of pre-placing assets or carriers where we need them, so that we know, we can be more proactive from the sales approach on knowing that in 3 days we're going to have 6 extra trucks in California or wherever, that we can continue this continuous move to keep carriers moving. So I think getting the visibility is the first step, in getting them on the same platform, so we're not sort of got a couple over here, a couple there. We got them on the same platform. That's the goal one. And then goal two is how do we use that network of carriers that we've got tracked and watching where they're going, to help place them and help keep them moving to a load that they might be right on top of, but just because of any maybe inefficiencies in our system, we're not able to see that order. So I think that's sort of the second phase of taking the platform to the next level of sort of pre-placing and pre-matching up carriers with loads.
Okay, great. And Prasad, back to you. Wouldn't it be a lot easier to track using ELDs? What would you say to that? Prasad, are you there? We may have.
I can probably chime in on that just from my perspective. We are doing a little bit of that now. That tends, and from our experience, has been a little tougher conversation, because it's more so once that switch is hit that there's more so of a thinking that you've got access to their entire fleet, and I just think that the carriers are more comfortable, at least the small carriers, with sort of the one-off approach here. So although it makes sense from the tracking the ELDs, I do think there's some compliance issues and some trust issues that may not be there yet with the carrier community on that. So that's, from our experience, had those issues. I don't know if Prasad's back on, but that's sort of what we've seen.
Marianne and Jeff, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I just went blank for a little bit there. So, I caught the second part of what Jeff said. So that's pretty much true. And in our experience, what we have seen is, in theory, ELD sounds easy to track, but the biggest hurdle is getting the carriers to share their ELD data. And sometimes onboarding a small carrier could take up to 3 to 6 months, even though you might have an integration already done, which, today's world, we provide the integration with the majority of the ELD providers out there. But, getting that carrier acceptance to share their ELD information. And the reason why we found out is it's not an easy task to do it, one. Two, the carriers are always worried about the unknown. With an app-based solution, they know exactly when their location is being tracked or shared with who. With an ELD-based software, it's not that clear. And, anytime there is an unknown, especially in the small carrier, mid-sized carriers, there is going to be a lot of resistance. Whereas an ELD solution might work for a large carrier, typically it's a lot of resistance from small carriers. So, if you look at the overall market, as much as everyone wants to claim that they all have ELD integrations, I think, I might be wrong on this number, but there are not that many carriers out there. If I were to guess a number, probably less than 100, less than 1,000 carriers probably share their ELD information.
Okay, great. And for Prasad again, we're getting some questions about the cost involved with trucker tools for both carriers and brokers. So maybe without providing, specific numbers, can you share a little bit about how your pricing is structured and what that kind of depends on?
So our pricing is going to be a lot simpler in this space. We're going, not the exact price, but it's a flat fee per load for the duration of the load. So you don't get charged if a load goes for 2 days or 10 days, a different price. It's just one price. And it's usually based on the volume of loads that you want to track, helping you. If you track more loads, then obviously the price is good for you. But for the details, if you reach out to our sales team, sales at Trucker Tools, they'll be able to price it for your volume.
Great, thank you. And the last couple, I think we can turn over to both of you. So maybe Jeff, for you first. We're currently using another app-based vendor for tracking. How hard is it to switch to Trucker Tools? Can you speak to that from kind of your experience?
Yeah, we really didn't. When we first got going, it was sort of, we were using 3 or 4 different vendors at once. So I guess we were sort of already connected with a couple. But when we made the decision to sort of go, full throttle with Trucker Tools, we really didn't have an issue. And again, I think I alluded to earlier, when talking about integrating with either software or other providers or getting the data directly to our shippers, they have been nothing but compliant and easy to work with in getting that done. So we really had no issues. The issues that you would expect when you're doing any kind of software integration, but it certainly was an easier process than anything we've been involved with. And again, we still have integrations currently happening with particular vendors, and Trucker Tools has been spot on with those. So it's easy.
Anything you would add, Prasad?
Pretty much everything that Jeff said, he covered everything from a customer point. We typically look at integrations as if you're currently using a technology for visibility, we like to make it easier for you to make the switch. Meaning, in most of the TMS softwares out there, we are already integrated with. So if you're using one of those TMS softwares, switching becomes almost a very instant process for you. 2, if you have an in-house TMS, we try to make our integrations very simple and quick. We don't want or we don't think that your technology team in-house is sitting there waiting for us to come and give them more work. So we try to assume as much work as we can and make that process quick. That's always going to be that goal for us.
Okay, great. And then Prasad, I'll let you speak to this one first as well. We also have some shippers that use MacroPoint and FreightWaves. Do you have any similar customers, and how can Trucker Tools push information to them?
So we have one customer here on the phone, Jeff's team, Choptank. They have customers that use other vendors. So in this case, say if you're a broker and one of your shipper uses either FreightWaves or MacroPoint or someone else, we don't have any issue sending the data to any one of them. Currently, we are integrated with FreightWaves, MacroPoint, and 4Systems, and few others. So we push the tracking information for that shipper on your behalf to these vendors. Now, one thing we want to be very clear is when we do that, we don't push your carrier information into those tracking systems to protect your confidentiality. Obviously, your shipper wants to know where the load is. They don't care which carrier is moving that load. So again, in the whole big picture, everything that we do, our goal is always to protect your confidentiality and your information, you as a broker.
Great. And Jeff, anything you would add to that?
No, I mean, again, we've got several customers that are, still using other services, and that's really never been an issue.
All right, great. Well, thank you both, and thank you to everyone listening in. That is all that we have for today. So we appreciate you taking the time to be here this afternoon. Jeff and Prasad, thank you again so much for being here and for sharing your insights into Trucker Tools, as well for partnering with us on today's presentation. We appreciate you being here, and we'll hope you'll join us again next time. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Thank you, Joe.